Hello, and welcome to Whiskey Storytime. Is that a good name? I don't know. It's the only name I've got, so we're just going to go with that. So, let's start by raising a glass. Cheers. This is Writer's Tears, the one that I've been drinking for the past few weeks. I don't know exactly how long, so... It's kind of sharpish, I guess. I'm still really an amateur, so I can't really tell the difference very well. But I like it, so I guess that's enough to start with. So, so this being Whiskey Story Time, I am definitely going to read a story tonight. And this particular story, I guess there's a little bit of a background story to this, actually. So when I was little, around 7 or 8 years old, I, as ever, I had a very big imagination, and I found it very difficult to go to sleep without being lulled to sleep by music, or at that age especially, by stories. And since my parents, for whatever reason, couldn't really read me to sleep anymore, they had bought me a tape player, cassette tape player that also could record. So what I did was I picked 3 of my favorite stories at the time, and I read them into the recorder, and I would just play that recording to fall asleep. So I would listen to my own voice to fall asleep, which is, partly sad, but also, frankly, kind of genius. Like, let's just admit, a little bit genius. So I actually remembered what one of those stories was, and I still have it. So that is what I'm going to read. Sorry, I had to take another drink. Okay. So, let's get into it. This one is called Jeremy's Decision. And it's about a little boy whose father is a conductor of an orchestra. And he loves going to see his father's concerts. But when he goes, inevitably, someone always asks him a certain question, and he hates that question. So that's what this story is about, that particular question and what his decision is. So let's get into it. So, this is Jeremy's Decision by Ardith Brott and illustrated by Michael Marchenko. I believe that's the same illustrator that did the Robert Munch stories, or most of them. So pretty well-known stuff. All right. Jeremy's family was getting ready for the concert. His mother was doing up her black and white dress. His father was putting on his cummerbund and his good cufflinks. His sister Allegra was slipping into her shiny black shoes. Jeremy combed his hair and tucked his favorite dinosaur book into his pocket. Jeremy's family often went to concerts because Mr. Brodsky was a conductor. Everyone was happy and excited. Everyone except Jeremy. It wasn't that Jeremy didn't like music. He did. It wasn't that he minded staying up late. He liked that too. It wasn't that he was tired of watching his father conduct. He loved his father, and he loved the concerts. But people were always asking Jeremy the same question, and that question didn't seem to have an answer. Jeremy knew someone would ask it again tonight, at least 3 times, in front of his father. That was the worst part. As it happened, Jeremy was right. Of course he was right. They weren't even inside the concert hall before the doorman smiled at Jeremy and asked, "Well, young man, do you think you'll be a conductor like your father?" It was going to be a long night. Jeremy didn't want to disappoint his father, but he wasn't ready to make such a big decision. He could feel his ears turn red. "I don't know," he said quietly as he pretended to look at something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Poor little guy. Jeremy's father brought the orchestra to life. He waved his arms and the violins sang. He pointed his baton and the kettle drums rumbled. He nodded his head and the flutes tootled and trilled. Jeremy began to feel better. Maybe no one would ask the question again that night. He opened his book, and while he read, he noticed how well the melody went with the story. When the music thundered, he could almost see giant dinosaurs fighting. When it was happy, he imagined dinosaurs playing at the edge of the lake. And when it was sad, he watched as the last of the dinosaurs disappeared forever. The lady sitting beside Jeremy was enjoying herself too. She studied Maestro Brodsky through tiny binoculars. That was a little bit... Anyway, Jeremy was so proud he forgot all about the question with no answer. "That's my father," he told her. Right away he was sorry. "Wonderful," she whispered. "Are you going to be a conductor too, just like your daddy?" Quickly, Jeremy looked down at his book. "I don't know," he mumbled. When the concert was over, everyone began to applaud, but Jeremy clapped the loudest. His father took 3 bows before the cheering ended. The 3 Brodskys hurried backstage to the dressing room. Maestro Brodsky was smiling. "Did you like the concert?" he asked. "I liked the cellos and the double basses," said Jeremy. "They made me think of dinosaurs walking in the forest." "I liked the flutes. They made me think of birds flying through the air," added Allegra. "I liked the whole thing," Mother said as she gave Father a great big hug. There was a sharp knock as the door opened. A very fat man with a hat and silver cane entered. "Bravo!" he exclaimed. "Wonderful performance!" He shook Maestro Brodsky's hand and kissed Jeremy's mother. "Dr. Grossenheimer, have you met Allegra and Jeremy? Children, this is Dr. Grossenheimer," said Jeremy's mother. Dr. Grossenheimer peered down over the rims of his glasses. Then his eyes settled on Jeremy. Before he spoke, Jeremy knew what was coming. "Tell me, young man, are you going to be a famous musician like your father?" Poor Jeremy. For the 3rd time that night he replied, "I don't know," as he busied himself picking imaginary fluff from the front of his jacket. A lady in a long gown and a huge strand of pearls came in next. They're not kidding. She wore sparkling silver shoes and long red gloves. She was the Duchess of Ramsbottom. That is quite a name. "So this is your little son," she cried. Jeremy blushed as she kissed the top of his head and squeezed his face so that he looked like a fish. "Tell me, young man, are you going to be a conductor like your father?" 4 times in one night! Jeremy wanted to run, but everyone was looking at him. "I do not know, madam," he said as politely as he could. Then he began to scratch at a mosquito bite that had just appeared on his hand. Jeremy didn't want to meet anyone else. He went to a corner and buried his nose in a book. Now that sounds like me. Just then, a man came to interview Maestro Brodsky. He carried a notebook and pencil and had a camera slung over his shoulder. "Misha!" he cried. "Congratulations! I've never heard the orchestra sound so beautiful." Jeremy's father smiled. "Thank you, Gordon. Do you remember our children, Allegra and Jeremy?" Allegra smiled shyly, but Jeremy pretended not to hear. He stared even more closely at his book. The man walked over to Jeremy and stood in front of him. Jeremy held his breath. Gordon bent close to Jeremy and smiled into his face. Then he looked down at the book and read the title. "Jeremy," he said, "are you interested in dinosaurs?" Jeremy couldn't believe his ears. Why, yes I am. Are you, sir?" "Of course. I think dinosaurs are terrific. Which one is your favorite?" "The Stegosaurus," said Jeremy. He didn't eat other dinosaurs. He was a plant eater. He had 4 long spikes on his tail for protection, and bony plates on his back that the sun would heat up to help him keep warm. He lived about 160 million years ago. I saw one in a museum once, at least the bones, and... He stopped and took a deep breath. Gordon had listened to every word. And then it happened. Jeremy made his decision. "You see," Jeremy said, "what I'd really like to do is go and dig up dinosaur bones and study them and learn more about them. I'm going to be a paleontologist when I grow up, not a conductor." This is him being excited. Yes. The dressing room became very quiet. The Duchess of Ramsbottom gasped and pursed her lips so that she looked like a fish. Dr. Grossenheimer coughed and peered through his little glasses. He looked very stern and a little like a bullfrog. Even Allegra stared at Jeremy with a surprised look on her face. Finally, Jeremy looked at his parents. Both of them were smiling. "Bravo!" shouted Jeremy's father. "I knew it all along," claimed his mother. "Good lad," sputtered Dr. Grossenheimer. "Clever boy!" cried the Duchess of Ramsbottom. Jeremy was so happy he said it again, just to hear the sound of it. "My father is a conductor, but I am going to be a paleontologist." "Good for you," said Gordon Alexander, and Allegra simply smiled. So, years later, if you went to the mountains, you might find Jeremy listening to music as he dug for bones and imagined dinosaurs playing at the edge of a lake. Like so. And if you hurried back to the city, you might get there just in time to see Allegra dressed in her shiny black shoes taking her final bow. So it's actually the daughter that takes after the father. That's probably why I liked this story so much. The end. So, I suppose that's about it. That was one of my favorite stories when I was little. And, well, I guess I listened to it over and over. I didn't so much read the book. I read the book once, and then I just kind of listened to myself telling the story. Yeah. So anyway, this is my little friend. He was here the whole time. Yeah. I guess that's about it. I think next time what I'm going to do is attempt this book, which is called The Three Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig. It's a play on The Three Little Pigs, the classic tale. But the thing is, there's something in it that makes it kind of, it's going to turn it into kind of a no laughing game for me. And I'm not really going to explain why that is, but if I do another episode, yeah, it's going to be a little bit crazy. Anyway, I guess that's it. Bye-bye. Night.